just so you're aware, super nervous. They don't let me out of the office that often. And I don't play well with others. So that's usually problematic. I have to get this out the way because I work for the government. Obviously, anything I say here is not the expressed position of either the Office of Nuclear Regulation or the British government as a whole. And that's just in case I say something and everybody gets worried. So, living with AI, relationship guidance for the future, which is quite interesting because I'm autistic, which means I have no idea about relationships whatsoever. But given that it's artificial intelligence, I think I do, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So the name is Sherlock di Schiavi. It's actually Roberto Marco Lucchesi di Schiavi. So not only am I autistic, but you can't understand me when I speak in my own language, which is very difficult. And I'm obviously the head of security architecture for the Office of Nuclear Regulation, which is quite interesting. At the moment, we hold 32 sites across the UK. I'm part of the corporate security, which means all of the communication facilities that come in, all of the guidance, the safeguarding, all that information has to come into us. And obviously, that is privileged information. And we don't want that getting out to the bad guys, no matter who they are. So, what my intention is to look at artificial intelligence as a whole. And I'm not going to do what usually people do, which is let's how protect it by pinning IP addresses, by talking about access controls. We know how to do that. We don't do it as we should do, but we do know how to do that. So what I want to look at is the understanding of at what point it is intelligent and at what point it becomes a concern. And I don't believe it is, but there are other concerns which come off the back of that. So me as an individual, I started off as a child hacker, around about the age of 7 years old. I then studied advanced mathematics and theoretical physics before joining the British Army. And in the British Army, I was responsible for defense, security, and obviously security posture, using things like electronic countermeasures, countermeasures, which is basically the old way of doing a DDoS attack on the enemy's signals, or preventing them from striking us with IEDs or, improvised explosive devices. So, we're going to have to start with the rules first, and this is about risk assessment. I know some of you don't like a risk assessment. I'm sure by the end of this, you're either going to hate it or love it even more. So like I said before, you've got me now for 3 hours. Not really, it's actually 20 minutes. It will feel like 3 hours though. If there is a vulnerability, it will be exploited. Incidentally, this is a friend of mine, Nick Espinosa. He also was a child hacker, and now on the other side of the pond, he does the sort of similar stuff that I do, and he comes up with these concepts, which is just brilliant and allows to feed straight back into to people in order to understand it. So this is the truth. This is the protocol. This is the logic of truth. If there is a vulnerability, it will be exploited. We know that already. Everything is vulnerable in some way. As we heard the talk initial this morning, we go off the position of secure by design, which means you will eventually be attacked. Now the third one is quite interesting, but before I put it in bullet, I want you to all check under your seats, because I left something there before, and if you could just hold it up, that would be really good. Oh, come on. No, is it not under that? Really? Yeah. So humans trust even when they shouldn't. Why? Why? Ironically, it was my people who looked under the chair. I don't understand how that happened. Okay, with innovation comes opportunity for exploitation. That's quite an interesting argument, because if there is no innovation, there is no risk. But we require innovation, and therefore risk is born into that. And we'll get to that a little bit later. When in doubt, see law number 1. That's not necessarily a cop-out, it's just that circle of life, the whole cooperative process, the interoperability of how those rule sets stand. So what is II and the art of puffery? You've all heard these adverts for security stuff, which I love, which is next gen. Next gen. Surely it's just now. So we have this thing in law which allows people to position a puffery, which means it's to do with puffing the chest. And basically what it means is they're allowed to lie to you or mislead you slightly, like Gillette, the best a man can get. All of those sort of iterations. I believe artificial intelligence is just that very same thing, and I'll explain to you why. In order to assess this, you go through first principles. So you're looking at these two words together, artificial and you look at intelligence. Now, we're going to introduce some interesting concepts here. I don't believe when we talk about intelligence, we're talking about people. I believe it's a substrate of mathematics which runs through the entirety of the universe, from the quantum space into the classical mechanics space. We're not there yet. We've got Planck's equation, which allows us to understand at which point we need to unify those theories. I did say it was going to feel like 3 hours, didn't I? So we can get rid of intelligence, I think, and we'll go through that. Now, if you've got rid of intelligence, you don't have artificial at all. So there we go. We've just got rid of artificial intelligence altogether. But why? Well, we can have a proper conversation, and together we'll work through this. We'll make our minds up. We'll decide whether the aspie doesn't know what he's talking about or whether it's credible. Informatics. Informatics is another form of computational mathematics which runs through the entirety of the universe. And I'll prove this to you today. Human intelligence and computational mathematics. This is what we're talking about, logic. We're talking about the ability for all of those mathematicians in Greek, Pythagoras, all of those guys who understood how to convert logic into real-world thinking, from taking that classical mechanical approach into things like weapons, into communication profiles, even mathematics. Even language, is mathematics. It's a substrate of mathematics. This is how humans learn. This is my version of a little baby who wants to play chess. So the baby plays chess. It fails. It goes back to being a baby. It plays chess until it works it out. It remembers the strategy to do with the experience, and then it's happy. This is how intelligence is translated from the universe into a working substrate, which obviously is the mind. So you could almost say that we're conduits of the intelligence. We all have it. Some of us don't know what to do with it. Some of us know different types of it. But it's always there. It's always there just for you to grab out of the ether. Informatics and human intelligence. Informatics provide tools for storing, processing, and analyzing information. Does that not sound like computing? It does. Databases, screens in which we can visualize it, and the CPU processor. And then we're back again to computational processing, but not calling it artificial intelligence. Computation models of human intelligence, the combining of computational mathematics and informatics. Now, I did write some stuff which would make it super simple, which I can't see. But we're looking at SAW, ACT-R models. We're looking at mathematical computation models like Bayesian theory, probability theory. If you're not enjoying doing risk assessments, you're not doing it the right way. It's a quantitative process with simulation theory on the back of it. You're using Bayes' theorem. You're predicting the probability of the attack, at what point you can get that attack. How is that not just amazing? That which can't be simulated. And I'll allow you to understand something at the end. The baby, I thought everybody was going to go, oh, because the baby, which is really good, thank you. Yeah. Sorry, it doesn't understand love, it doesn't understand humor, smiles, doesn't understand the intricacies of people's face to see whether they're sad or whether they're happy. AI doesn't know any of this, or more to the point, machine learning doesn't know any of this. So how does this information get through the universe? Well, it gets through by entropy. Does anybody here have red hair? Okay, so we've got a couple of people with red hair. I'm going to explain to you why your hair's red. This is Beetle Guys. It's not from there, because that one's still existing at the moment. It's still out there, but it's pulsing. And how that works is with Rydberg's hydrogen transition process, which is how all field theory, wave theory, is understood. The color red is very specific. And it's a constant for hydrogen. 1.097 times 10 to the power of 7 meters, which which translates into 696 nanoseconds, which means when you look at it, if you could stop time, you would see between every pulsation, you would see 696 nanoseconds, and that's what causes the red. At some point, a red giant exploded and ended up some of those wave particles on Earth, absorbed into the Earth, and eventually turned out in those beautiful people down there with red hair. Technically, it's not your hair or your color. It belongs to the universe. Now, this is the hard bit for me. As I said before, I have autism, but I have multiple comorbidities that arrive within that position. I have something called prosopagnosia, which means I don't see people's faces. So I can honestly say that you're all beautiful. So here's what I see. I can see your nose, I can see your mouth, and I can see your eyes, but I can't translate that together into an algorithm that allows me to understand who you are. So you wonder why I can recognize people. I have something called synesthesia, which means I see everything in colors. When I hear people's voices, I see the translation come across in words. Everything is a color. It's a movement of smells, senses. It's all just acclimatized to understand specifically for that time and space. I actually believe that you guys all do that too, but I just think that you have fully functioning amygdalas and appropriate cortex displacement, which means that as you filter through the cortex, you actually translate it into what you see, what you physically see. That's when you hear quantum physicists saying the universe doesn't exist, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder, because it's the cortex that translates that data. Aphantasia means I don't see pictures if I close my eyes. It means if I close my eyes and I think of bird, I see the word bird. That's it. What does this sound like? Sounds like machine learning, doesn't it? Sounds like what we were calling artificial intelligence. Some experiences not felt, which allow us to understand that time, space, that theoretical process of happiness and sadness. I don't see that. I can hear it through leaking. I can hear it because of movement, because of tone, because of distortion, through what some people will call aura, but it's not aura. It's actually just my synesthesia picking up on your, what I call leaking. So in summary, there's no such thing as artificial intelligence, because intelligence doesn't exist. It belongs part of a substrate within the universe, which is just a mathematical correlation of computational mathematics, error coding, all of those sort of interesting stuff, which allows the universe to grow and expand. Because we like to anthropomorphize, we give our dogs names, we give our cats names, we give them houses. We like to think that it's something more than it is. That leads to a huge problem, which means that if we think it's real, do we trust it because we're anthropomorphizing it? But as we've heard so many times before, behind the so-called artificial intelligence is simply mathematical code, scripts, which are programmed by humans. And there are two types of humans within the cybersecurity world: the bad actors and the good actors. So we need to understand that. We need to wake up. We need to understand the substrate of mathematics. I'm not talking about becoming advanced theoretical physicists. I'm just talking about understanding that the quantitative approach to risk management is the only way to do things, not gut feeling. I said to a guy down there before, he said that I was a cybersecurity expert. There's no such thing as a cybersecurity expert. Today I may be, tomorrow there may be a brand new threat. And I've got to learn that threat. And if I'm not quick enough, I don't take those advantages to learn the process, then I'm just another guy. Are there any questions? Really? Not just one little niggling? Just...
Explain quantum physics in 2 minutes.
Well, I don't consider myself human, if that's what you mean. I actually don't. I call, so for instance, you heard from Holly this morning. She's a fellow autistic. Just she's got the ADHD part as well, which can be too much for me. But, you know, we're here to help. We want to get involved. We want to help you guys out. We're the aliens who've come down to help. That's what it feels like sometimes. Thank you.